Oh, hi. I have a really great project I think you're going to really like. I made a remote controlled Minn Kota trolling motor. It runs on 12-volt battery. And just like most of those cheap Minn Kotas you find in the store, let's check it out. I think you're going to really like this.
First thing you're going to do is start with your 12 volt deep cycle marine battery or a lithium battery. The next thing, for safety purposes, you're going to put in a fuse box with a 40 amp fuse for the trolling motor and a 5 amp fuse for the steering. You're going to wire that up, and you're going to wire over to a pulse width modulator, which is a speed controller for the trolling motor side of things. You're going to wire that over to your 2-channel relay remote switch, which I have it under a 433 megahertz remote, and wire that over to your Minnkota. I have an Endura 40-pound thrust trolling motor, but you could add this to a 30 or a 50-pound thrust. In this case, this is all for 12 volts, but you could probably work this out for a 24 volt too. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to get another pulse width modulator. It's a smaller one that converts 12 volts down to 3 volts, and that is going to go to a fuse box with a 5 amp fuse because it's smaller or amperage. And then you're going to run that over to another 2-channel relay remote switch, that 433 megahertz, and then that is going to go over to the gearbox that you're going to build in this video, and that's going to power the left and right steering with a remote.
I have a replacement Power Wheels gearbox here for those little kiddie like drivable Jeeps, and I'm going to be boring out this to accept the shaft of a Minn Kota trolling motor, which is about 1 1/4. So I have a 1 1/4 hole saw here, and I'm going to put it down here and just slowly drill through this so it can accept that shaft of that Minn Kota. Gotta go slow. As soon as it hits resistance, it's gonna want to torque this thing, so you're gonna have to just work your way slowly. Just go up and down. Once you use that hole saw, you're going to cut through all the way like that. I have a Minn Kota Endura 45 thrust electric trolling motor. And to make this project, we're going to have to take this off, the whole thing. So we just have this shaft and the wire, and then the shaft is going to fit onto this gearbox. We're going to have to take out the screws here, here, and here, and that should open up the top here. We're going to take the guts out. We're going to take this shaft off, this tiller arm, because this is how you change the gears, but we won't need to use that. We're going to be adding something different, as you can see in the diagram. Once you get all the 6 screws out, you can take this top off. I would suggest you keep all the screws handy so you can put this top back on once you get everything put together again. Once you get into the inside of this, you'll see that the tiller arm has the gear shifter. You can just pull that out. I would save this stuff in case you could use it for something else. I don't know. It might come in handy at some point. But what you're basically wanting to get to is you're going to take all this off, and you're going to just save you just want the red one and the black one. These are your cords that go to your battery. So you're going to save those. And then you're going to also save the red and black wire. These other wires are for switching polarity, I believe. To get this head off of here, you're just going to take this one set screw off, and then the head will come off and you will have just the shaft. Once you get that loose, you can just pull this bolt out. And this piece should come off. It'll rotate and you can just pull it off. Maybe tap it with a hammer to get it off. Like so. There. Okay, that's off. Now this shaft is ready to go through this gearbox. With this off, I would suggest just putting these little screws, machine screws, back in and tighten them slightly just to make sure you don't lose any of them, because when you want to put it back together again, everything will be there. Just tighten those up, and you're just going to put this to the side for a while until you're ready to put it all back together at the end. So the only wires you want going down this shaft to the motor is the 2 main power. These ones are mainly signal. I'm going to leave these just a little proud of the top of the shaft here. I'm going to take this collar off, and then I'm going to put these wires through here eventually, and slide this through the shaft here. Then this is going to go back over. The idea is that this collar will rest in between a little tab I cut out of this white area here on this gearbox, and it'll lock into place. So when this rotates, this will make the shaft go left or right. Here's a collection of some of the tools that I used with this. You can get by with a lot less tools, but screwdrivers, wire strippers, crimpers. This is a ratcheting crimper, but this crimper I end up using a lot too. This is a wire stripper. So is this. I have some screwdrivers with socket. I have a screwdriver with a flathead that can switch over to a Phillips, needle nose, wire cutters or metal cutters. Now with the wire that you have that goes to the battery and the wires that go down into the shaft, we're going to join those together and make just one long cord. This is like 8 or 10 gauge wire, so it's a little hard to strip it the wire, but you're going to cut the ends off and then you're going to strip them about that much, and then we're going to crimp one of these. I'm going to push these in. Make sure you have the right gauge. You want like at least 10 gauge. You're going to push those in like that. Then you're going to crimp it with a crimper. I prefer this kind of crimper, or this particular crimper. But you're going to crimp it. You have the yellow, you put it on the yellow, and you're going to squeeze it good and hard. And that will crimp it to the butt joint there. And you want to pull on it and see if you can pull that out. And if you can't, then it's that one's ready to go. Do the same thing with this one. Push that in. Find the yellow one. And you're gonna squeeze that good and tight. You're gonna test it. It doesn't come out, because you want good continuity for that. And then I'm gonna strip these and do the same thing with these butt splice, and I'll show you in the end here. Okay, so I got these stripped, and so I'm just gonna attach the black one to the black one. Put that in there. I'm gonna crimp it. Then you're gonna test it. See if it pulls out. Same thing with this one. I'm gonna make sure that they're lined up pretty good, so they're not fighting each other when they curl up. I'm gonna push that in there and crimp that. Now these ones are shrink splices, so if you add a little bit of heat to them, they will shrink onto the wire that you're splicing. Just don't want to scorch it too much. Now that we have the butt splice completed right here, see if you can see it on the butt splice completed here, we're going to just test our continuity and make sure that this thing's going to work. So I'm going to attach it to this battery, and that should make the motor right there turn on immediately if it's working right. So remember your red and your black, so negative, positive. So I'm going to attach this, and then I'm going to immediately attach that. It immediately turns on, so we know we have continuity. A really great idea for attaching this so it can't flop all around is to put it down here and add some L brackets. And I will put a link to the gentleman who came up with this idea for his Kayak trolling motor. I would highly recommend you drill some pilot holes so it doesn't tear out this plastic bracket, but you're basically just gonna put some screws through here, and that will fasten this. You could put some bolts through there too if you wanted. I put these brackets down, and then I took a Sharpie and marked it here and here. I'm gonna drill that out next. So I ended up putting some bolts with nuts on the bottom for these, instead of screws, because I figure that they would eventually pull out and these might hold longer and keep this bracket from breaking. Once you get both of those in, this piece can just set down there, and it doesn't have much play. It might have a little bit of play, but it's not going to have a ton. Then you can always lift it back off there again, so that's what makes that kind of handy. I made a couple wires that'll attach to this motor down here, and they have this, and this will go to this finished box, which I'll show you how to build. But it's just going to plug into here, and that's the power from this converted from this car battery. That gadgetry in this box will power that motor right there. I'm going to be cutting this bracket out. This bracket will drop down into this groove right here, and whenever this rotates, it will make the motor go left or right. So what I'm doing for this is I'm going to drop this down to here, and I'm going to cut this across here to about there. I want it to be somewhat snug, so I'm going to cut that out right there, and I'll show you how to do that. First thing you want to do is get this shaft out of the way while you're trying to cut it. So I'm going to take this collar out here. I'm going to take this off, put it down here, and drop this shaft below. We'll see whether I can do this with the actual wiring on here. So I don't want to cut my wires. So I got one of these multi-tools. It has a little teeth on them. I'm going to see if I can get into there and cut it this way. Alright, so it looks like it's going to be the right way, but it's going to take a little finesse. I'm going to file this a little bit. Just make sure to get these wires out of the way so you don't file into through the insulation of them. I'm gonna try to get this piece to drop down through here. This lip right here is going to be a problem. Although this part will now drop into this slot that I cut, I got to take this lip off, or else it's not going to drop down in this. This lip is keeping this from dropping into this groove. So I'm going to have to take this off. I'm going to take this off, I think, with that multi-tool again. Well, I'll get back to you on this one. Okay, so I got this. I took that multi-tool and cut off that lip, the lip that you see here. I cut that off on this one, and then took a sander and sanded around it to smooth it all out. Then we're gonna check whether it'll fit into that spot again. Okay, so it fits in there. Fits in there now. We're gonna pull this shaft up through here. And then we'll put this guy will come on here like this. It's gonna lock in. You're gonna tighten this. Okay, just like that. Now we're going to test this battery. Goes really fast. So we're gonna have to bring that down, but it's turning it as designed. Next thing I'm gonna do is add this connector to this motor, so I can just plug it in and take it out and not always have it all hardwired. So these connectors come with these terminals, I guess, and what you do is you're gonna just crimp this pretty tight so it can't slip out as best you can. And then these, you're gonna find your red, and you're gonna push that into your red slot, and it'll just lock in place. You'll hear it click. Once again, you're going to put the negative, you're going to push that up into here, and you'll just hear it click. Just like that. And now that's completed. We're going to just take this slowly, and I'm going to show you how to wire all this up. First off, here's inside this box. This port right here is to the battery. So this, the first thing this does is this is going to wire to this fuse box. Okay? So I'm going to do this, and it'll look a little weird, but I'm going to show you first. You have the plus, you have the minus. You're going to take the red as your plus, and you're going to wire this onto here. Now, granted, you have to make these wires. I'm just showing you how to wire it up. Okay, you're going to have to learn how to make some of these wires. So you're going to have to learn how to strip the end of a wire and end up making it look like, by stripping it, I mean you're gonna cut the end off and it's gonna look like this, and then you're gonna put one of these pieces onto it. You're gonna crimp it. Then when you're done doing that, then you're gonna get the right tool. This one has a little socket I need, so I'm going to tighten this. This is a ratcheting screwdriver, so that's what I'm using it for. I'm going to put this one on here and tighten it down as much as you can. And now that's ready to put a fuse in. Now the fuse we're going to need is you're going to need a 40 amp for your main motor, your propeller motor, and you're going to just push that into place like that. Then the next one you're going to need is a 10 amp, and that goes to your steering. Okay, just like that. Now, for your negative wires, those are gonna go on the ends here, and then your positives are gonna go next to the corresponding amperage that you need for. You're gonna unscrew this. It's helpful to have a magnetic screwdriver sometimes so you don't lose stuff into the box. This is gonna have to be about a 10 AWG wire, or a 10 gauge wire, because this is a pretty high amperage going through these. It doesn't have to be as heavy as these 8 gauge wires that are going to the battery, but they still need to be able to carry the amperage that is going through them. This one also, this is a pretty heavy gauge wire, and I made a forked terminal on this one. Make sure to get it underneath the washer, and you're going to screw that in pretty tight. Okay, just like that. Then we're going to have this heavy duty one going under here, under this screw. Got to make sure you have it loosened enough so they can fit under there. You want as much contact as possible when you're wiring stuff. And you screw that down pretty tight. And this one's going to go into this. So I'm going to have to take this one all the way out in order to get the post on here. Okay. Just screw that one down tight. Okay. Great. Next thing we're going to go to is this PWM, variable speed modulator. These are really awesome. They have a little percentage indicator. You could just keep it in the box, or you can drill something out and make it so you can see through the side of your box. I just leave it in the box because I don't need anything super precise. Then you have a potentiometer, which is your dial, which changes the speed of your motor, of your propeller. It's going to go really fast down to off. I usually have it at 100% though for that. But you can lower it. The way this is wired, there are two little wires on the very bottom here, and I snipped those because these two wires are going to be my on-off wires that turn it on the remote control. That freed them up right here, and these two are going to go to this 2-channel remote relay, and then they're going to go into the first relay channel. But we'll get to that. There was also a little switch. I'll show it in the picture. It's this thing right here, and that, let's see if I can get closer. That is off, forward, and reverse. So you're going to cut that off and leave these 3 wires. And they are going to be added to this as your on, forward, and reverse relay, which is this one right here. I'll show you how to hook all this up. The first thing you're going to do is take the most durable of the wires, the heavier wire, which is I think an 8 or a 10, and you're going to add that to where it says Power Plus. So you're going to jam that in here. Mine has been worked on many times, so it looks a little rough, but You're gonna wire that in. Okay, make sure it's nice and tight. Then you're gonna take the other heavy wire coming off the fuse box and you're gonna stick it into the power negative right there. Just stick it in there and tighten it down. Like that, and make sure it's nice and tight. Okay? So you have power coming from the fuse box, going to the pulse width modulator, and that's what's going to determine how much voltage goes to the motor. Now these say it goes out to the motor, but what we're going to take this to is we're going to take this from here to this remote relay. Okay? So we have the wires for all that. By far, the thing that takes the longest to do in this project is clipping your wires and stripping them, and sometimes putting spade terminals or other kind of ends on it, so you can screw it into the various things like this. You'll also need what I think are really handy to have are Wagos. Wagos is a levering, like you could look at it as a wire nut. It's kind of like a wire nut, only better. You put the wire into these slots, and then you snap this shut, and it won't come out. And you can get up to 5 port Wagos, which I used in this project. I also needed lots of terminals, and you put those on the ends of a stripped wire, and then you find the corresponding color, and you squeeze onto the metal bit, and it crimps it on there. We're going to give this right here is where voltage in. You're going to have voltage in, and right next to it is going to be the ground. Okay, so voltage in from here. It's going to go from here, and we will tighten that down. Make sure it's good and tight. Okay, take another heavy wire, and you're going to stick that into this port of this, and you're going to tighten that down with the right screwdriver. Check it. This potentiometer. We're going to take the potentiometer, and we're going to take the knob off and this nut, and then we're going to drill a hole for it and push it right through there like that. Take the nut, screw that on there like that. We're going to turn it all the way off so it clicks off, and then we will put that back on there. So now the potentiometer can be used. Now the potentiometer had two wires that we snipped, and that's going to be for on and off. These are the signals going to this remote. So these 2 wires that we snipped from the potentiometer, we're going to put the black one here, like this, into this first spot. Normally open 1. It's NO1, which means normally open 1. We're going to put it in there, and then we're going to tighten that up. Make sure that we have a good connection here when we push this in. we're going to tighten that. Now the red one is going to be tied in to this emergency kill switch. Okay, so this is a 4-post emergency kill switch, and when this is pulled, depending on how you have it wired, that will be normally normally closed, and then when this is pulled it'll be normally open. So we're going to put that in, and then we're going to take that red and our first Wago, okay? Our first Wago. And we're going to push that into the Wago, like that. Snap it down. And then we're going to put this purple wire is going to go into this other side of the Wago. Snap it down. And then that is going to get wired, pushed onto this post right here. It says M. And then we're going to make another one, and that one's going to have a post here that'll push onto the opposite side of the M. And you're going to have this one that is going to go into this spot right here where the red wire would have gone. So now you have a red wire that goes to this purple wire, creates continuity, and then from here it'll go to here, and then you're going to tighten that up. That's going to be your on-off with a kill switch. Okay, I'm going to have links to all this stuff. You just have to follow what I'm doing, and you might have to rewind multiple times to get this. So the next wires you're going to add to this are these 3 wires that we cut off that switch that goes from off to forward and reverse. So the first one you're going to put in is your red into this. This relay controls these 3 screws here. So your red is going to be forward, and then you're going to tighten that. Remember not to do any of this when it's powered up. Now, the next wire is going to be your yellow. Okay. Oh man, that one slipped out again. I don't understand why it's doing that. See if that one slips out. I think I might need to cut this and get some fresh wire sticking out of this. I don't know. We'll try it one more time. Jam that in there. Tighten it up. There. Your final wire is going to go in the NC2 slot. Shove that in there and tighten it up. Okay. So now we have that all hooked up. That's the first part of this. When you're wiring up the motor out, I added this port here that will go out to my propeller. So this is a kind of a higher gauge wire. So these I put on here, and my negative wire and my red wire, they will correspond with a negative and positive on this PWM. So I'm going to shove these on here, and I'm going to tighten these up. Okay. To wire up the smaller 2-channel relays, remote relays, and the smaller PWMs, you can power these with less than 40 amps, or I would suggest you do. So I power these with the 10 amp. So I'm going to be taking this wire right here, and I'm going to put this into the 5-port Wago. And I bought 10 gauge Wagos off of Amazon. They're not easy to find in like Home Depot. So 10 gauge gives you a much bigger port, so you can have higher gauge wire going into them. Now, I power this with different wires than I power this guy right here. Man, this is it gets to be a squirrel's nest really fast. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna power this from this same 10 amp fuse. So that's gonna go into there, which will power this guy. And then I'm gonna get another 5-port one, and that is going to go to this wire right here. This one is going to go into this negative port of this Wago. Okay, so we have power to this, power to this. This is going out there. We have this wired up to this. So, in theory, the power should be going out to the rotor, out this port. Now, the next one we have to do is for the powering the next PWM. And this PWM also has one of these guys, but you don't have to snip anything on this. We're just going to take this potentiometer off, where you're going to drill a hole into here. We're going to set our ring and tighten it up. Sometimes you have to tighten it with a needle nose or a pliers or something. And then we're gonna take it all the way to 0, and then we'll take there, and then that functions. Have them both at 0 for now. We have this. I have some wires going to, it says power, plus and minus. So I have those. These are also going to be powered by this Wago. Okay, not by this one. We're going to have it to this. Push that in. And then we're going to snap this one in. Go like that. Snap that in. Okay, so there's power to this PWM, and there's power going out of this at whatever you turn the dial. So since this is a smaller voltage requirement, though, we're not going to have such high output for these. I have these going out to the last dual channel relay. I'll have links to all of these. So this PWM, the purpose of this is to bring the voltage down or up, depending on which motor I want to run for steering, left and right. The transom mount that I have has such a high RPM when it's at 12 volts that I need to bring the voltage down to make it a slower RPM. I want this to be providing 3 volts to that gearbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another Wago. I'm going to put it on either side of these. And then these are going to go to multiple red wires. I need 2 red wires for this. You want them about the same width or length, sorry. And this one, I want 2 wires about the same length for this as well. So 1, 2. So now we have to add power to this. And so I'm going to push this one in. And this one will go into this port here. Tighten it up. Okay. And this one will go into this port. To make sure you have it small enough so you can push this in. And we're going to tighten this. Okay, test both. Then this one will go into this last 5 port. And then I close all of them because I'm not going to need 1 port. So this is powered. And now we have to send the signal. And with this, we're going to do this by, we have these, remember these purple wires coming from this PWM. They might be coming out at 3 volts or they might be coming out at 12. So we're going to attach them to a 3-port Wago. And now this goes into this one. And just do it the way I'm showing you. And then this one will go into this one. Like that. And then we'll put the, find that other 3-port Wago, and we're going to put this one into the normally open. Push that in there and tighten it. Test it. Always test them. Then you're going to put this one into this. And you're going to tighten it. Okay. Okay, these are all pretty firm. Now, this is going out. I have this port right here, which goes out to the steering. And so I added these 2 heavy-duty wires right here into the box. And they're going to go into these spots right here. but I'm actually gonna make them smaller so they can fit, because they're way too heavy gauge for that. So I'm going to put this red wire into here and tighten it. Then I'm going to put this wire into here like that. So these go out to the motor, the steering motor. Actually, I'm going to get a smaller wire. Sorry. I'll put these into here. Jam it in there. Tighten it down. Okay. So these are going to get a 2-port, and this is going to get a 2-port Wago for both of these. All right. Now, these will go to their corresponding one on there. Usually give yourself extra wire whenever you can. Okay. Then we're going to put this back on here and we'll try it out. These little 2-channel remotes come with 2 remote controls, transmitters I should say. This is basically a receiver, and what you're doing is you are hitting a button and it's activating one of the relays, and your B button is usually activating the second relay. But this particular brand that I bought has full instructions with it to tell you how to wire it and also how to program it. The reason I used 2 of these, and I got both of them to be 433 megahertz transmitters. The reason I got 2 is I need one remote that can, when you hold it down, it will turn the steering, and when you hold the other button down, it goes the opposite direction. But for the propeller, I need this to just have a momentary on, and then when I hit this, it goes forward and reverse. Once you have these programmed, you can also buy a really cheap, like $9 4-button remote, and then you can program it according to the directions of the remote. You can program it by, basically what you do is you reset this, and then you hold them really close together and hold the buttons down together until this lights up, and then this button will correspond with whichever button you program. So for instance, on my trolling motor, I use this remote now. I can use these as backups, but I use this, and this turns left, right, turns the propeller on, and then this button turns forward, and if you hit it again, it turns it to reverse. So when I took my jumper cables that went with this, I put another one of these ports on the end of this to plug into here. And so I'll plug this in, and you're gonna have to cut out a little profile with like a Dremel, or I used a jigsaw. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but it worked. Same with these. I used a drill, and this one goes out to the motor. So showed you how to do that part. So we're gonna plug that in, and then we're gonna take this plug and we're gonna plug it into this port over here. There. So now you have this kind of central nervous system that will take the power and convert it to this motor. And when you do this, if you have it all wired correctly, you should be able to turn this and turn on your motor. I originally tried to start the propeller and it wasn't going, and so I brought out my multimeter to check continuity on this kill switch, and it wasn't wired correctly, so I had to change the posts onto the I labeled posts. Now when I do it, it turns, and if you hit this button, it switches to reverse. Now you can change the speed by lowering this, and if as I change it down to its lowest setting, it barely turns, but now it works better. This has been a really awesome project for me, and I hope that you can figure out a way to make an affordable version of this for yourself and your trolling motor. If you like this, please hit like or comment. All of the links should be in the description, and feel free to comment or message me if you have any more questions. Thanks for watching.